on Google and just type in, is education wasted on the young, you get all sorts of stuff. But you get an enormous amount of vitriol and bitterness. And I think there's something really important to understand about education, which is, for some people, it is opening all sorts of worlds and opportunities and realising people's talents and ambitions. But for some people, it's just terrible. It's a terrible, terrible experience. And therefore, I think, the education investment in lots of young people is completely wasted. In other people, it's absolutely critical. And I think, for me, the answer to this debate is, yes, it is wasted on some, but for some people, it's really, really important. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about that. And there's a dangerous trap I want to try and avoid, and that's the trap where people say, the kind of I know better thing, which is those young people, education is wasted on them. And you get quite a lot of that. And I think there's a kind of piousness about it and a superiority which we need to get away from. I don't mind people saying, I wasted my education when I was young, because I suspect most of us in our hearts believe that. But I think we have to be careful. And we have to be careful for a really, really important reason. My first point is, the education system is set up for the average mythical student. And there is no such average mythical student. And the chronology of age and the chronology of personal development is very, very personal and cannot be catered for in a mass education system to make sure everybody is supported in the way they want to be supported through the education system. So inevitably, we will end up with a system in which at 16 or 18, lots of young people will come out looking at the world as one full of opportunity and hope and ambition and optimism. And lots of young people, don't know how many, but lots of them thinking life is pretty crap. And I think that's inevitable when you come to a system approach to education. I don't think there's any way around it. That doesn't mean you don't improve the system of education. It doesn't mean you don't improve the assessment regime, which I think is really dispiriting and disengaging. It doesn't mean that you don't help young people learn to learn and try as hard as possible to make that compulsory system work effectively. But what you've got to do is you have to, if you're a policymaker, if you're a government, if you're a minister, if you've got any influence, you have to accept that the education system will result in some adults not having realised their ambition and their talents and thinking that education and learning is not for them. That means that you have to allow for a second chance. There has to be a second chance opportunity for adults. And anyone in this room will know that the adults that we meet who have gone for a second chance in learning and who have achieved so much and whose eyes have been opened, whose worlds have been transformed, whose opportunities have transformed, who have been influential on their family, their colleagues, their friends, their workmates. They are truly inspirational, and that opportunity to unleash that energy, it has to be one of the reasons why we should give people a second chance. But we know with tight tax times and austerity that the opportunities for second chance learning are diminishing. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The cuts that hit England in the last 4 or 5 years are starting to bite in Wales. And that means that we've got to do some different things. We have to change the way we think about adult learning and the opportunities for adults. We have to think about some dangerous ways of getting employers and individuals to invest themselves. We cannot expect governments to put enough money in to support learning for adults. So there's lots that we could talk about tonight in terms of dangerous ideas to encourage people to invest in themselves and for adults to invest. But we've got to do it for a number of reasons. If you just think about a few statistics, young people coming out of compulsory education at 18 will have a career of something like 45 or 50 years. If they're going to retire at 68 now, it might be 75 by the time they get there. That's a long, long time if we don't have a lifelong learning society. Children born in the year 2000, one of my kids was born in the year 2000, they've got a 50% of chance to live to 100 or over 100. Therefore, living longer requires lifelong learning. And 13.5 million jobs in the UK being needing filling in the next 10 years, only 7 million young people entering the labour market. So adults will need to retrain time and time again in that 50-year career to be able to stay in the labour market. So lifelong learning has to be an investment that we all take much more seriously and not expect the compulsory education system to fill all of the gaps. It's just not going to work. And if you don't kind of buy any of that, Let's just think about a sort of society that we might live in 5 years' time, where there isn't lifelong learning, there aren't the opportunities to meet with fellow citizens, to come in groups to learn and to come together and think together. Because I don't really want to live in a society where people don't do that, where we don't all enter a room as equals, we don't all enter a room thinking that we have something to learn. Because for me, that brings tolerance, it brings community, it brings cohesion, and it makes life worth living. So education is not wasted on the young, but some young people don't quite work in that education system. Let's make sure there's a second chance.